And please don't listen to anyone that tells you when you should do it or how you should do it, because process is figuring out through exploration which way allows you to create your best stories and your best characters.
Do you believe all writers should outline?
Absolutely not. I remember that. Now, I was in a more ornery state when I was a little angrier when I was younger, but when I first started writing and had success, I was invited on a panel and there were different teachers. And each teacher got up and said, you got to outline. And there's two kinds of writers. There's writers that outline and then there's writers that fail. And if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. And if you just dive in and start writing, you're just going to get lost. And you have to outline. Now, again, I just want to put a caveat. I was younger and angrier. So it was my turn. I was the last person. And I said, hi, I'm Corey Mandell. I sold Metropolis to Ridley Scott. He's making the movie, because at that time he was making the movie. It ultimately didn't happen. But anyway, at that time, he's making the movie. And I just sold 2 more scripts, one to Warner Brothers and one to Paramount. I didn't outline any of those. And I sat down. So one of the teachers took the bait. And they're like, well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're writing. There's like, if you're doing like but if you're doing like a structure, and I interrupted, I said, well, one script is a thriller, and one is a science fiction, and the other is a very complex plotted script. And I sat down, and then they just went, well, maybe there's always an exception to every rule. And then of course I couldn't let that go. And I said, or there are no rules. And then it devolved from there. So now, I didn't outline. For me to say, so you shouldn't outline, is incredibly stupid. It goes back to process. You got to find what works for you. I know writers who are incredibly successful who outline. I know writers who are extremely successful who don't outline. So what I would say is, if you always want to outline and you feel like you'd be lost if you didn't outline, you should learn a process where you don't outline to see where that takes you. Usually you're going to do your best work. Not necessarily always, but you should try that. If you're someone that just likes to wing it and you're like, if I have an outline, I don't even want to write it. Like, to me, it's all about the joy of the discovery. You should outline before you write, to try it. Not for the rest of your life, to try it. It's really frustrating because, writing is a creative, well, it should be a creative pursuit. And like, when you're around young kids before they get damaged, like, they play with such innocence and joy and spontaneity. And they don't live in a world of shoulds. They don't live in a world of rules. They just live in a world of, I'm a pirate and you're this, I'm on that. And it's just spontaneous, and that is so human and so captivating. Yeah, their stories are simple because they're young children, but they're full of joy and authenticity. And then we just get damaged as we grow up, and we get these negative messages and we get criticized, and we start being told what we should do and what we have to do and what the rules are. And if you don't follow the rules, ooh, you're in trouble. And that just kills creativity. So your process, explore it open-heartedly. And the other thing I'll say about outlining, just because I know we're almost out of time, so I can't go into too much detail, but there'll be a lot more information on this on my website if you want to check it out, corymandell.net. A really big thing that I do with my writers is story design. And the best writers rarely outline. Now, they might story design before they write, or they may write and do story design, but story designing is very different from outlining. And I think a lot of writers, if they can find a way to escape the outline prison, they're going to feel liberated, they're going to suddenly love writing a lot more, and they're going to be much more successful. So let me just define the difference between story design and outline. Here's what an outline is. You're figuring out the events, what's going to happen in your script. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and ooh, that's going to happen. So you're figuring out the events and the chronology of the events. That's not what the best writers do. They don't start with the events. They don't start with the order of the events. What they start with is their objectives. What is their objective? What are they trying to get people to experience, and why? And that's called an experience map. You actually map out the experiences you want people to have throughout this journey. Then, and only then, you find the events that create those experiences. And then you figure out how to make those events compelling. It's complete opposite how most people do it. So most people, just, like me, who went through film school, we're taught, have a bunch of compelling events and find the order of it. That is so rigid and limiting, and it doesn't usually add up to anything. And it was just a mind blower for me when I worked with Ridley Scott or Milos Forman or got to hang out with Quentin Tarantino. And I know I sound like I'm dropping names. I'm not saying any of these people are my friends. I either worked for them or I met them in parties and I talked to them. So I'm not trying to do that LA thing of like, oh yeah, I'm friends with all these people. But one of the really cool things about launching my career early on in Ridley Scott, saying he was going to make the movie, is I was the big hot writer for 8 months. And so I got invited to all the cool parties. That was great. And I'm a writer nerd. I'm a story nerd. So, Harrison Ford's there, and Sharon Stone or Kathleen Turner or whatever. I'm really dating myself. No, anyway, but these stars are there, and I'm like, okay, the Coen brothers or Quentin Tarantino, and I would just go hang out there and want to talk about writing. It was a real revelation to me how they work, because I was always trying to understand other people's process to try to improve mine, because I knew I had a flawed process as a writer. I was doing the best I could with a flawed process. So it's like I was a golfer. I didn't have good mechanics in my swing, and I had to do a lot of things to compensate for it, but I really wanted to improve my swing, so to speak. So yeah, they don't outline. They don't figure out the events. They figure out the experience they want you to have. Then they find the event that creates that experience. Then they make that event compelling. And I'll tell you, if you try that and you learn how to do it, you'll never go back to outlining, and you will say, why wasn't I doing this from the very beginning? Now, after you've done that design, it will create an outline. So the outline will actually be the result of the design. It won't be what creates the design. And I know that anyone listening to this who's at all interested in writing probably has a million questions. This is an hour conversation, but I segued into it. You can go to my website, corymandell.net. Just to bring it all home, if you're outlining or doing story design, however you do it, there are very successful writers who do it up front. There are very successful writers who write a bunch of drafts to find it and then do it. You have to do it at some point. And please don't listen to anyone that tells you when you should do it or how you should do it, because process is figuring out through exploration which way allows you to create your best stories and your best characters.